Hey guys, thanks for joining us. Pastor Cody asked me to bring this week's house church message, which I'm thrilled to do. I've been loving our study through the Gospel of Mark. I don't know if you've picked up on this, but for at least 4 to 6 weeks, Jesus has been getting his boys ready for this chapter. This is a turning point. This is a crisis moment for them. They're not aware of it, but Jesus is. Same with you and I. We may think that the things that happen to us are just happening to us by coincidence. I'm convinced, and maybe you are too, that in the Christian life, there's no such thing as a coincidence. It's a divine opportunity. It may be ordinary, it may be commonplace, it may be routine. But when God gets involved in it, the common becomes uncommon. The natural becomes supernatural. Jesus has now been teaching his guys about his ability, miraculously, about his character, supernaturally, and now he takes them on a trip. He leaves Galilee. He leaves the area of familiarity, and he takes them up, all the way up to the headwaters of the Jordan River, to a place called Caesarea Philippi. It's an amazing place. I hope someday you get a chance to visit there. The Jordan River actually comes out of a cave. The headwaters flow out of this cave. There's this ginormous rock there, and it's my conviction that maybe this is where Jesus was, or at least headed there, when he poses this question to the disciples. Let me read it to you from our study this week out of Mark chapter 8, verse 27. Now Jesus and his disciples went out to the towns of Caesarea Philippi, and on the road he asked his disciples, saying to them, "Who do men say that I am?" So they answered, "John the Baptist, but some say Elijah, and others one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered and said to him, "You are the Christ." He strictly warned them that they should tell no one about him. And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things, be rejected by the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He spoke this word openly. Then Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But when he had turned around, he looked at his disciples. He rebuked Peter, saying, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are not mindful of the things of God, but the things of men." Wow, what an encounter. From star pupil to the doghouse, Peter is asked the question, "Who do men say that I am?" And the other guys chime in. "Well, we think you're this," or "some say you're that," or "they think you're like Elijah," or "some think you're one of the prophets." But here's the turning point. Jesus turned it to them. "Who do you say that I am?" Now, if you've been listening to Cody's messages on Sunday, this is the critical piece. Are you seeing Jesus clearly? Not for who you think he is, or who you want him to be, or a Jesus after your own making, but are you seeing Jesus for who he is? The clear revelation of Jesus the Christ. That's critical. And there's so many things that play into how we see Jesus and why we might perceive Jesus, or how our conception of Jesus might be changing or growing or expanding. The critical piece in this for us today, when you guys are in your small groups and you're talking about this together, is to kind of put together the challenge of how did I get to this place to see what I see about Jesus now? What is hindering my clear revelation of Jesus as he is, not as I think he should be or as others have told me he is, but as he really is? And then what does that mean to me now? If he is the Christ, and he is the Christ in my life today, then what does that mean? Where does that take me now? People perceive Jesus in so many ways, and you've heard Cody talk about this, that they see him as a good teacher or a good man or a role model, or some say as what we can all be, the Christ consciousness that we can all develop. Those are just imitations. Those are substitutions for the real truth of who Jesus is and why Jesus came. You cannot separate those in the Gospels. Who Jesus is directly tied to his atoning work on the cross, and he predicted that. And while Peter was quite willing to step up and say, Well, I think you're the Christ. You're the Messiah. You're the promised one. You're the anointed one we've all been waiting for. When Jesus took that to the next phase of the redemptive story of God through the Bible, Peter couldn't handle it. Peter's mind was blown. Wait a minute, if you're the promised Messiah, you're supposed to deliver us, rescue us, elevate us. And here you're saying that you're going to let men treat you that way, kill you, mock you, eliminate you? It just blew Peter's mind. But the cool thing is, now that we have the post message, we've seen the resurrection story as part of this message. The disciples couldn't hear it. Their brains couldn't wrap around it. But the important thing for you and I as we talk about this together is, what are the implications of this in our lives? So to help you in your small group, maybe to kind of break the ice, why don't you take a moment, and if you were your friends, the people that know you the best, were to describe you in one word, what might they say? Spend a few minutes talking to each other about that. How do people perceive you? I mean, and what is your reputation among those who know you best? Can you summarize that in a word? That's what the disciples were saying about the reputation of Jesus. Well, you're Elijah, you're a miracle worker. Or you're John the Baptist, you are a revolutionary speaking a very direct message. Or you're like one of the prophets. But Jesus wanted to take them deeper, and he wants to take us deeper. The next question I think that would be good for us to spend some time in our house church message time with you and your Bibles open and with each other in your small group is, why is the question, who do you say I am, so important? I've loved the way Cody has pressed this home the last couple of weeks. It's critical. That is the most important question I think you will ever get asked on this planet. Who is Jesus to you, really? And is it personal? Are you just repeating what your parents said? Are you repeating what your pastor said? Are you just kind of mimicking what your culture says? Or do you have a clear revelation of Jesus? If not, why not? What might be hindering that? What walls have you constructed? What belief systems have you erected that are keeping you perhaps from seeing Jesus? So answer that question amongst yourself. Why is this the most important question that anyone could ever ask? Who is Jesus to me? Spend some time talking about that with each other. And then I think it's kind of fun to think about how Peter could get that part of the question so right, and then in just moments go so wrong that Jesus had to take him aside and say, "Get behind me, Satan. Satan's using you, Peter, speaking right through your mouth. You don't understand the things of God. You're not mindful of the things of God." So Peter went from star pupil to in the doghouse. How did that feel to him? And why do you think it was so difficult for him to grasp the message? All right, one more question that I think would be good for you to spend some time talking about. If Jesus saw that going to the cross was not weakness but strength, if Jesus understood, which he perfectly did, that the atoning work that he would accomplish there required him to bleed out and die, as Christians today, how does that reality, the message of the cross, affect the way we live, the way you and I see the world, the way we interact with the world? Ask yourselves this question. If the cross was central to Jesus, how can it become central to me, my life, my family, my ministry? Are you seeing Jesus clearly? Spend some time. Read the text over. Ask yourself these questions. Let me give them to you one more time. If your closest friends were asked one word that best describes you, what might they say? Secondly, why is the question, who do men say that I am, or who do you say that I am, so important? And third, how did Peter go from star pupil to being in the doghouse? And why do you think Jesus reacted so strongly to his misunderstanding about the cross? And finally, if the cross was central to Jesus, how can it become central to us? And what difference would it make in the way we live our lives? God bless you. Thanks for being a part of our house church ministry.